Hear me well on this day. When you have reached the hilltop and you are deciding on next jobs, next steps, careers, further education, you would rather find purpose than a job or a career.
He was a king on screen, a warrior off screen, and a legend in silence. He brought to life heroes like Jackie Robinson, James Brown, and Thurgood Marshall. But behind every powerful performance was a man fighting a battle no one saw. This is the story of Chadwick Boseman. His life, his art, his impact, and the legacy he left behind. Chadwick Aaron Boseman was born on November 29, 1976 in Anderson, South Carolina. He grew up in a close-knit working-class family. His mother was a nurse, and his father worked in a textile factory while also running an upholstery business. From an early age, Chadwick was surrounded by hard work, faith, and community, a foundation that will stay with him for life. Before the red carpets, before Wakanda, before the world even knew his name. There, Chadwick Boseman was in his junior year at T.L. Hanna High School when a tragedy struck close to home. A friend and teammate was shot and killed, an act of violence that stunned the community and silenced the halls of his school. However, silence didn't sit well with Chadwick. While others mourned quietly, he picked up his pen. He poured his confusion, his questions, and his pain into a play titled Crossroads. It wasn't just a school project. It was a memorial, a protest, and a prayer, all in one. He didn't just write the play. He directed it. He gathered his classmates, staged rehearsals, and turned the school's modest stage into a space for healing. That moment was the spark, not for acting, but for storytelling. Chadwick didn't want to be seen. He wanted to say something. Even then, he believed in the power of art to confront injustice, to make sense of suffering, and to change the way we see each other. That spark took him to Howard University in Washington, D.C., a school known as the Mecca of Black excellence. There, Chadwick majored in directing. He had no interest in being a star. His dream was to tell stories that mattered from behind the camera. But destiny had other plans. At Howard, Chadwick met one of his most important mentors, Felicia Rashad. Yes, Claire Huxtable from The Cosby Show. But more than that, she was a trained actress, a teacher, and a fierce believer in her students' potential. She saw something in Chadwick, his quiet strength, his discipline, his depth, and she pushed him to explore acting, not as a career move, but as a way of understanding what it means to lead, to feel, and to speak truth with your whole being. Then came a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In 1998, Chadwick and a few other Howard students were accepted into the British American Drama Academy's prestigious summer program at Oxford University. It was a dream, but it came with a price tag that many of them, including Chadwick, couldn't afford. That's when Felicia Rashad picked up the phone. She called a friend, a quiet philanthropist, a man who understood what it meant to pay forward the blessings he had received. That man was Denzel Washington. Without fanfare, Denzel agreed to cover the full tuition for Chadwick and several other students. He never made it public. For him, it wasn't about headlines. It was about lifting the next generation. Years later, in 2018, Chadwick would stand before Denzel at the American Film Institute tribute and say, with full gratitude,
There is no Black Panther without Denzel Washington.
And he meant it. That scholarship didn't just send Chadwick to Oxford. It gave him the training, the exposure, and the belief that he belonged in the highest rooms of art and excellence. Before the cameras rolled, before the Marvel universe expanded, Chadwick Boseman was already learning how to carry greatness with humility, with purpose, and in silence. Chadwick didn't burst into Hollywood with a big bang. There were no shortcuts, no viral breakthroughs, no big break that changed everything overnight. He took the long way in. After Oxford, after Howard, after years of rigorous stage training, Chadwick moved to Brooklyn with the quiet determination of someone who believed in craft over clout. He supported himself by teaching acting to kids in Harlem, mentoring them the same way he had been mentored, not for fame, but for purpose. Acting wasn't just a job to him, it was service to humanity. In the early 2000s, he began showing up on screen in episodes of Law and Order, CSI NY, Cold Case, and ER. One day, he would be a grieving brother, the next, a criminal suspect. Blink, and you might miss him, but every time, he brought depth. He turned even the smallest roles into portraits of humanity. He wasn't just delivering lines, he was listening, learning, sharpening his instincts, laying bricks. But Hollywood has its shadows, and Chadwick saw them early. One of his first major TV gigs was on the soap opera All My Children. He was cast as Reggie Porter, a troubled teen from the streets, but something felt off. The character leaned heavily on harmful stereotypes. Angry, uneducated, violent. Chadwick pushed back. He didn't demand fame. He demanded dignity. The showrunners didn't like it. He was fired. He stood for dignity, even when he had little power in the room. For some, that would have been the end, but for Chadwick, it was only the beginning of a lifelong refusal to accept roles that disrespected Black identity. Interestingly, his replacement on All My Children was another young actor, Michael B. Jordan, who would later become his rival-turned-brother in Black Panther. By 2008, something shifted. Chadwick landed a role in the sports biopic The Express, playing Floyd Little, a real-life Syracuse football star. It wasn't a huge part, but it was a meaningful one. It marked the beginning of a pattern. Chadwick stepping into the shoes of real men who broke barriers, who carried weight, who mattered. He wasn't chasing roles, he was answering calls that fit his mission. And while the world still didn't know his name, it was beginning to feel his presence. Because Chadwick Boseman wasn't just building a resume, he was building a reputation for integrity, for preparation, and for a quiet intensity that wouldn't stay quiet much longer. Behind the scenes, he was still writing and directing. He didn't see acting as the goal, but as part of a larger mission. And what was the mission? Telling meaningful stories. In 2013, Chadwick Boseman stepped into the cleats of a legend, Jackie Robinson, the man who broke Major League Baseball's color barrier. 42 wasn't just a sports biopic, it was a test of range, grit, and restraint, and Chadwick delivered. He didn't play Robinson as a symbol, he played him as a man, flawed, fiery, scared, determined. In one scene, after being taunted by a racist manager, Jackie breaks down in a tunnel. That moment wasn't in the original script. Chadwick suggested it. It made the film human. It made the legend real. Hollywood took notice. Then came Get on Top in 2014. This time, he was the godfather of soul, James Brown. The transformation was electric. Chadwick didn't just act. He danced, moved, and spoke like Brown. And he did all his own dancing. Every spin, every shuffle, every slide. It was all pure commitment. Where 42 was restrained, Get on Top was wild, unpredictable, genius, just like James Brown himself. Again, Chadwick took on a complex black icon, and again, he nailed it. In 2017, he became America's first black Supreme Court justice in Marshall. But instead of telling the whole life story, the film focused on one case early in Thurgood Marshall's career, when he was still proving himself. Chadwick showed us Marshall's brilliance, but also his vulnerability. A man who had to argue law in a world stacked against him. It was another reminder. Chadwick didn't pick roles for fame, he picked them for purpose. But everything changed when he put on the crown. Chadwick Boseman first appeared in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Captain America: Civil War in 2016. It was a film packed with big personalities: Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow. But when Chadwick stepped onto the screen as the Prince of Wakanda, something shifted. He didn't shout. He didn't grandstand. His power was in his stillness, his quiet confidence, his every word measured, every movement intentional. He didn't just act like a king, he embodied one. And then came the year 2018. Black Panther. It didn't just arrive in theaters, it detonated. It shattered box office records, soared past $1 billion worldwide, and became the first superhero film to earn the Best Picture nomination at the Oscars. But Black Panther was more than a blockbuster. It was a cultural revolution. For the first time, African culture wasn't a backdrop or an afterthought. It was the heart of the story. Wakanda wasn't colonized, broken, or begging for help. It was advanced, sovereign, stunning. It was what Africa could be, unshackled by history. And at the center of it all was Chadwick Boseman. T'Challa was a different kind of hero. He wasn't driven by revenge or ego. He was thoughtful, burdened, wise beyond his years. A son mourning his father. A ruler learning to lead. A man balancing tradition with change. And Chadwick played him with royal gravity, like someone who understood that this role wasn't just acting. It was inheritance. It was a battle for dignity, a battle for representation, and a battle for hope. Across continents, across cultures, the world felt it. In African villages and American classrooms, in theaters in Lagos and Los Angeles, children saw a king who looked like them. A superhero who didn't hide behind a mask, but led with his face uncovered, his voice unshaken, and his purpose clear. Chadwick wasn't just playing T'Challa. He was offering the world a version of black excellence it had rarely seen on screen, one that didn't apologize or assimilate, one that stood tall. He became more than a star. He became a symbol of pride, a symbol of strength, a symbol of what is possible. And through it all, he wore that mantle with the same grace, humility, and fire that had carried him from a high school stage in South Carolina to the throne of Wakanda, even as his body was battling in silence. Chadwick Boseman was still giving the world everything. In Da 5 Bloods 2020, he appeared as Storming Norman, the fallen leader of a squad of Black Vietnam War veterans. He wasn't in the film for long, but his presence haunts it. Like a ghost of what could have been, his scenes feel spiritual, even prophetic, like he knew something we didn't. And then came his final performance, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. In that film, he played Levi Green, a fiery, ambitious trumpet player clashing with history, racism, and his own pain. Chadwick poured himself into that role. The rage, the laughter, the desperation. You can feel the ache in his body, in every trembling line. He wasn't just playing a man on the edge, he was living it. That performance earned him a posthumous Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. What the world didn't know was that behind the camera, Chadwick was dying. Back in 2016, the very same year he was introduced as T'Challa in Captain America: Civil War, Chadwick had been diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, a devastating private battle ensured. He told no one, not the public, not the studios, not even many of his co-stars. While fans celebrated his rise, while he stood tall on red carpets, delivered inspiring speeches, performed intense stunts, and represented a generation on screen, he was undergoing surgeries and chemotherapy. And still, he kept showing up. He filmed Marshall, Infinity War, Endgame, 21 Bridges, The 5 Bloods, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. He trained, fought, danced, gave interviews. In between takes, he visited children battling cancer, never letting them know that he was fighting the same enemy. In one particular emotional moment, Chadwick was speaking about 2 young boys with terminal cancer diagnosis who told him they were holding on just long enough to see Black Panther. As he recounted the story, Chadwick broke down in tears during the interview. He paused, struggled to find his words. The weight of what he was carrying, physically, emotionally, spiritually, briefly surfaced. When I found out they passed, it hurt, he said softly. Because I was like, man, they didn't get to see it. That wasn't just grief, that was purpose. That was a man who knew his work meant something deeper, especially to those fighting battles most people never see. He could relate because he was also fighting the same battle. That is not just strength, that is sacrifice. On August 28, 2020, Chadwick Boseman passed away at just 43 years old. The news came like a thunderclap, sudden, disorienting, devastating. The world didn't know. His fans didn't know. His friends barely knew. And then, all at once, the silence made sense. But in that silence, the world began to speak his name differently. Not just as an actor, but as a moment, as a movement, as a mirror for Black excellence. Black Panther was no longer just a movie. It was hope. It was healing. It was proof that Black stories don't just belong in Hollywood. They lead it. In his honor, Howard University renamed its College of Fine Arts after him. The same school where he walked in as a young storyteller now bears his name to inspire the next generation. Director Ryan Coogler said it best. He lived his life the way he worked, by giving everything. And in the end, that is exactly what Chadwick Boseman did. He gave us everything. And somehow, even now, he still is. He didn't live a long life, but he lived a full one. He reminded us that purpose is more important than popularity, that dignity matters more than spotlight, and that the truest heroes may never tell you they are hurting. And like he said in Black Panther, as you can see, I am not dead. His legacy lives on. If Chadwick inspired you, drop a comment, share your favorite role, and say it with your chest. Wakanda Forever! Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Rest in power, King.